Hi, today we're going to make Korean style pickles with whatever vegetables you have in season. Today we're going to make pickles with cabbage, onions, cucumbers, radishes, carrots, and beets. And one special ingredient we can try is the garlic stem. I'm not sure whether you would have them easily available at your neighborhood, but I know you can get them at Korean grocery stores. In picking the onions for pickling, I like to use the ones that are small and sweet. And I like to pickle the onions as whole rather than cutting them into bite size because I don't want onions to be too salty. You also have to make sure that you put the onions sort of tight into the jar so that the onions don't float up and the pickling brine will cover all the onions. I'm going to cut some into halves so that they can fit better into the jar. It's kind of like doing a Tetris. Now we go into the cucumbers, and I like to cut them into maybe 2-inch or less than 2 inches in length. That way you don't even have to cut it when you are ready to serve. Again, in choosing the cucumbers, you have to make sure they're kind of narrow and firm, and squeeze them into the jar. The carrots, I like to cut them into sort of bite size. Oops. Oh well. One thing though is that with the carrot, you just want to make it rounder. With the radishes, I like to cut them into half. That way, this is all bite size and easier to eat. Again, with the carrots, I will round the corners. And this prevents it from breaking apart, and it's also nicer to present in sort of like a little carrot ball, and it kind of goes well with the rounder radishes as well. You can use the sort of the remaining carrot peels in a soup or in a juice. With all of these vegetables, please make sure that you squeeze them tight into the jar so that they don't float up. This is a huge cabbage, and I have what in Korea they say I have big hands, which means I tend to buy much more than I need. And for the pickling, I'm only going to need maybe a quarter of the cabbage. So I'll cut the cabbage into bite size, and I like to use the red cabbage because when you pickle the red cabbage, the color bleeds and it kind of makes it very pretty. So I fill the jar maybe with a little bit of cabbage. And I'm going to add beets that's been roasted a little bit, but not fully roasted, so you can see it's hard right here. You don't want to use raw beets because it's harder, and it takes a long time to pickle the raw beets. So I roast it in the oven for about maybe 10 minutes, and then you have it slightly roasted so it's easier. You can actually hear when I cut, you can hear the sound of the beet. So it's not really fully cooked. The reason I put the cabbage and beets together is because the color bleeds, and so you want all the red ones to be together. Little more beet to cover on the top. It's kind of hard to peel the beet, but you have to be careful you don't cut your hand too. I think it's ready. Just sort of squish it down a little bit. We have the garlic stems, and you have to cut it maybe in 3 inches. As I said, it may be difficult to get these at your local grocery store. I do know that they sell them at Korean or even Chinese grocery stores. These are really great because it has the sort of the garlicky taste, but it's nice and crunchy. The reason I put this on the top like this because you don't want the garlic stems to float on top. So we're going to make the pickling brine. The key to a good pickling brine is the ratio of the soy sauce, water, sugar, and vinegar. You don't have to worry about actually the measuring cups or, whether it's the ratio is 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. So if you have, let's say you use the European measuring cup, you just have to make sure that you use 1 cup to 1 soy sauce, 1 soy sauce to water to sugar. So it doesn't matter, it's the ratio. As long as you keep to the ratio, you'll get a perfect pickling brine. Soy sauce jar is kind of heavy, so I'm shaking. People may ask, what kind of soy sauce are you using? And I usually, for the pickling, I use just regular soy sauce, Korean soy sauce, rather than the Japanese one, because the Japanese soy sauce tend to be a little more sweet and saltier. So we mix it all together and boil. And once it starts to boil, then I would add the vinegar. Three cups of vinegar. The reason I add the vinegar later after the soy sauce and sugar and water has boiling, because you don't want that sort of the tartness from the vinegar to evaporate too soon. Now we're going to pour the brine. Make sure that you're pouring hot boiling brine. Can you see that it's really piping hot? Don't worry about cooking the vegetables because it won't. You have to pour while it's really piping hot to keep the vegetables nice and crunchy even for a year. It looks really nice already. Very beautiful. You can keep the pickles in the refrigerator for up to a year and it will remain nice and crunchy and sweet and tart, and you can serve it with meat, fish,